Our next guest started a company in 2007, and this year took it public with a 50% pop, bringing in over $100 million. We are super thrilled to have him on our stage. Please welcome Mikkel Svane from Zendesk and Alexia Tsotsis, our moderator.
Hi, Mikkel.
It's very fun.
Yeah, I know. They're really. This one's actually broken, which you could see if you were watching John Bigson. Thank you for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
Hi, everybody. How many of you have heard of Zendesk? Okay, all right.
How many is customers?
Yeah, how many are customers? Yes.
All right,
20%.
I'll take credit card afterwards out here.
Mm-hmm. So you're Denmark's second national treasure after Morten Lund.
After Morten Lund, yes.
You've also written a book. It's an amazing book. I really love it. I especially like the foreword. It's just so fantastic. Disclosure, I wrote the foreword, so.
Yes. No, it's an amazing foreword, and thank you very much. It's called Startup Land, and we have a little preview out here of it later today, and we have the book in the bookstores on early December.
It's a really funny book. It's pretty wacky. In it, you talk about how much you hate flying.
Oh, yeah.
So now that you've raised hundreds of millions of dollars, just taking a yacht everywhere, how'd you get here?
Well, yes, I flew here. So that's, of course, a thing when you are a startup and when you are European, especially when you're based in Europe, there's all the action, a lot of the action is in San Francisco, Silicon Valley. So you fly back and forth all the time, and so did I, 5-10 years ago. And I struggle with a lot of fear of flying, and that just makes every journey so much more taxing. But I've learned to live with it. I can embrace it much more today. I also buy much more expensive tickets today,
so
which helps.
You didn't fly a coach?
No.
Okay, so as we said before, you are Danish, and it's my understanding that it's pretty dark there. Is that why your book is so dark at times?
I hope not. How many here do we have from Denmark? We have a few. There's a few hands.
There's Morten.
And Morten down
Hi,
here.
Morten. I love your shoes. I think we're in the same.
So Denmark, a little bit. We have a very long winter. It's long and it's cold and it's windy, and in many ways, like a startup, it's also like the early days of a startup. It's a long, cold winter too in many ways. So maybe there's a little darkness in it. Yes.
So you guys will like this. Mikkel's first startup was named Kaput, and it didn't go very well. In the first chapter of your book, you literally hit rock bottom. Can you tell the story?
Well, so I built a smaller enterprise software company in the pre-dot-com days, and during the dot-com boom, we had a fantastic time, and we sold our software all over Europe. But once the bubble burst, we lost almost all our customers. We resold our software through resellers, and a lot of these resellers went out of business too. So we very, very, very quickly went from having this fast-growing business to having a business without any customers, and there was a very hard time. It was a bootstrap startup. We invested all our own money in the company and was basically financing our own growth through customer acquisitions, and in so many different ways, we had a very hard time dealing with turning a company around that was seeing their business disappear completely. At the same time, we had to let go of all these employees, and many terrible things happened at the same time.
What was the worst thing? There was something really bad that happened.
Yeah, and right in the middle of all of this, we had suddenly an employee who didn't turn up for work, and it turned out we had to find him home in his apartment, and the young guy, and he had basically died during night, and it's a little hard to get up from these kind of experiences and keep building your company, and that was really I can't imagine hitting a harder bottom than that.
So you actually found him in his apartment dead, and then the next day you had to go and lay off more people.
Yeah.
How do you survive that? Like, what keeps you waking up? That seems really like a very difficult thing to deal with.
And it is, and I think in many ways you could argue that we try to have this small startup, we try to make it work for too long. Like, there's a good saying, like, if you have a startup, it's also good to know when to say quits. You know, if you have, like, if things are not working out for you, like, you also, before you start making bad decisions, before you start making terrible decisions that are not good for the long term, you have to figure out a way of saying quits before you wasted all your resources, before you wasted all your time, before you burned too many bridges around you just to keep the company alive. So you could argue that our first startup, we struggled too long with trying to make it work.
And one of the people you had to let go was the creator of Ruby on Rails.
Yep.
And then Zendesk is actually built on Rails for those of you that don't know. So do you still talk to David? Is it weird?
Well, I don't talk to him that often, and I think he's very busy with his race cars too. But true story is that David Hyneman Hansen, who is one of the Basecamp founders and the inventor of creating the framework Ruby on Rails, was a young employee at this previous startup, and young guy, did fantastic, but the company didn't do well, and we had to let him go. And it's funny to see then this kid like grow up and then change the world. It's inspiring.
Apparently, it happens quite a bit. Actually, they fired Steve Jobs. He came back. So you very famously took Zendesk public in May, which the markets were extremely volatile. And now they are even worse, even though they've been up for the past couple days, which looks good. Any words of wisdom for the very niche group of founders that are trying to take companies public right now? What are you going to say to Jack Dorsey?
Well, no, I think he knows much better than me what to do. I think that, taking a company public is not something you should think about in the early days of building a company. Like, it will come if at the right point in time you feel that you have the predictability about the business, you have a fast-growing market in front of you, and you feel that you have a good path for continuing to lead that market, then it's a natural thing to take a company public. And then basically, then you can do it in any market. If you don't gear yourself, if you don't over-leverage the company and the valuation and so on, you can always take a company public. But it's like, you should never do it before you're ready, because taking a company public is immense amount of work. And you will stress and drill down all your employees in getting all the documentation, all these things ready for a public offering.
So people are saying there's about to be a huge correction in the market. Do you feel like you got Zendesk out just in time?
I think it was the right time for us, and I think that is what really matters when you think about these things. You can never optimize for the market, and you should never think about optimizing it for the market. You should optimize for when it's the right thing for you as a company to go public. And maybe there'll be a correction. The one thing I know about stock markets is that they go up, and then they go down, and then they go up, and then they go down. And I think, like, if you look at the stock market, overall, like, it's impossible to have any good feeling for how stock market works. So you have to focus on your company, your stock, and your performance.
So I have a really hard time imagining you in a quiet period.
Well,
That's probably why you wrote the book. But probably the only other person who's harder to imagine than you is Aaron Levy.
Yep.
So will Box ever go public? What do you think?
Well, yes, they will. Of course they will. They build a fantastic company. They have fantastic customers, and of course, when they feel ready, they will go public. But so I don't know how many here are familiar with the term, but up to the IPO, you have a quiet period when you can't basically, sell the company. You can't go out publicly and talk about the great stuff coming from the company and so on. And that is a quiet period, and people take that very, very seriously. There are people from government institutions monitoring my Twitter feed to make sure I don't say anything about kind of soliciting the company or its stock. And I have multiple quiet periods in my life going forward that I have to live with.
I think Levy actually tweeted, quiet periods are really fun, said no one ever. During his quiet period, and I think that may have gotten him in trouble. So
I can only imagine that like the SEC is emailing his lawyer every single day.
So now that we're on the topic of you not being able to talk about things, you've got your second earnings ever in a week.
Yep.
How's it going to go?
So we're still in the we still very much feel that we're in the honeymoon phase after the IPO. And like we enjoy very much the attention, we enjoy all the excitement around it and all these different things. So it's a very exciting period. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of preparations. I have a new cycle for how I work, and there's a lot of people involved in preparing the earnings call and making that moves go smooth and so on. So we're always I'm very much looking forward to these things, and it's a new experience. And I think that's the cool thing about building a startup and taking it all the way is that you learn something every single day. Like every morning, every week, every quarter, it's a new set of challenges, and that's a cool thing. You know, like you don't build a startup to, for the money or for the product or the technology. You build it because it's a journey. It's like it's your life. It's an opportunity to learn and have all these experiences and meet all these people. And I really fully embrace that. I think it's fantastic. I feel so privileged to have tried this and doing this, and I wouldn't swap it for anything.
So, but specifically, are you going to show more or less of a net loss? I know it's great. Building a startup's awesome. That's why we're all here. But should I buy Zendesk today? Should the people in the audience be on their Fidelity?
I think people should visit our website and should try our software. I think it's a fantastic product, and I think it can help your businesses driving much better customer engagement. Okay.
So before you were such a great success, and before you were on our stage as the CEO of a $1.5 billion market cap company, at some point it was $2 billion, but today's market, you were actually rejected from the conference. You were rejected from TechCrunch 50. You know how we do these battlefields up here? He didn't even get in.
No, we've never been accepted for any competition. Always got rejected.
Were you even accepted for Startup Alley?
No. I think that was after our time. Yeah. But no, it's true story. Like the very first TechCrunch 20, it was called back then, was in 2008. And yes, we got a bit down the process, but we were basically rejected.
Why? Tell us, what happened?
Well, we were sitting in this small loft in Copenhagen and trying to have these calls with Heather and Michael Arrington and Jason Calacanis, who was part of the organization back then. And
say Calacanis again.
What's that?
Calacanis.
Sorry.
Calacanis is also good.
And basically trying to do these conference calls where we could pitch the product and so on. And these things just got rescheduled all the time. I don't think they realized that we were 9 time zones away. So it was always scheduled for like 3 a.m. in the morning and 4 a.m. and constantly got moved around. And suddenly one day we had a chance to pitch to Jason, and I remember he was like, "Yeah, so what? You built a help desk with an RSS feed?" That was his comment. That was like the most boring thing he ever heard. But we were not very good at pitching, to be very honest. We were very much focused on the product, and all this pitching stuff, we were terrible at it.
So is there anything, now that you are on stage and you beat the beast, as they say, is there anything you want to say to Jason Calacanis 7 years later?
No, I've had my conversation with Jason. I think we're good.
Again, if you guys read his book, amazing forward. If you read the book, you realize that you've been through a lot of many ups and downs. What role do you think luck plays in an entrepreneur's journey or the journey of a startup?
Luck is luck around timing, luck around the people you meet, luck around the first customers, luck around if you create the right pricing model, all these different things. you really have to embrace luck and, look for luck and search for luck. But like, it's a little bit like comparing to like, if you know that on this street out here, behind 1,000 doors, maybe one of them has a golden egg behind it. Like, you can just go out and pick a few doors and see if you're lucky, or you can just go out there and then maybe open all the 1,000 doors, and if you're lucky, it will be one of the early doors. But like, as an early startup, there's no way around going out and just opening all 1,000 doors. Building a startup, being lucky is just so much work. And everybody here who's a startup, who's an early startup, knows that startup is so much work.
Being lucky is so much work.
Yep.
That's really good. Your first American investor, Charles River Ventures, they weren't interested in doing your Series A unless you moved from Copenhagen to Boston. What do you think about these types of ultimatums for startups? Aren't they a little bit like, we're going to strongholdy?
So I think that we had a big American dream. Like, we wanted to come to startup land, we wanted to get over here, and I think for us, we fully embraced the fact that if we wanted to work with a VC that could really help us, we needed that VC close by. So I think we had a shared interest like that. But if you think about it, if you were to invest your money, would you want to invest them in something that was 9 time zones away, or would you want to invest it in something that was right down the street from where you live? And I think it's a very natural thing for VCs to say, if they want to invest in something, we need to, especially if it's an early business, an early startup where you can still move things around, it makes sense to get people to connect and live closer to each other.
So I want real Morton Lund type answers to the next two.
Not sure I can do that.
What's the worst thing about taking other people's money to build a company? The worst thing.
The worst thing about taking money?
You have to listen to them.
No. I think if you find the right type of investors, you want to listen to them. I think and I described that in the book too. But when we did our first Series A, it was so much work. And you pitch it so hard, and it's all these negotiations back and forth, and there's so many things to figure out. And it takes forever, and you have all these ups and downs and things you cannot comprehend. And then suddenly one day, the transaction is done, and the money ticks in on your account. And at that point, it's a little bit like you feel a little dirty, you just somehow, it's all these grand words and plans and business plans and Excel sheets with projections that I don't know what, and the vision for the product and how you will change the world and all these things. And then it all comes down to a few $1 million that hits your bank account. And at that point, you feel a little bit dirty.
Why dirty?
I don't know, it's just like, it's I don't know,
it's just... want to take a shower?
Yeah, like a lemon shower. I don't know, it's just like this feeling of all these grand visions, and then it's all about dollars in the end.
All right, so just for fun, here are some names that you've called your various companies. Kaput.
Yeah.
Help Desk Factory. Forum. Thank You Machine.
Yep.
Yeah. I think you now understand why it's probably not the best idea to call a company kaput. Yeah. Well, did you just call it fail?
So I think if there's any Italians in the audience, any southern language, you know that caput and capo and all these things, that's it's the opposite of the corpus. You have the corpus and the caput, that's the head. So we thought that was very smart and creative, and of course it was terrible idea.
Yeah, but you really did hit the bullseye with Zendesk. Your stock ticker symbol is Zen.
Yep.
Should I buy Zen?
Zendesk turned out to be a fantastic name for us, and when you pick names,
how do you pick a name?
It's a terrible process, because every name you pick, you feel it's the wrong name, and it's really, really hard to become familiar with a name and feel that it's the right thing, and you have no idea how it works up front. Zendesk was a lucky choice for us, and it has formed how we think about our brand and how we think about what we do, and it turned out to be a really good name. So thank you.
All right, so in your book, you give advice to founders: hire more women than men. How's your ratio?
Ah,
Is that what you Still have more women?
No, I think we are an engineering-heavy organization, so I think overall the company is like 1 to 2, females to males, so unfortunately the other way around. But no, but it is, especially when you're in the world of customer service, like a female voice works better. And you know, for all the initial contact, we just measured that even like using a female name in emails and so on had a better conversion rate.
But still, you haven't hired more women than men, even though we sound better on the phone.
You know, if we didn't have an engineering division, we would have a lot more women than we had men.
I mean, we can change that. It's up to us.
It is.
Here's the Satya Nadella question. I think that's our last question,
All right.
unfortunately, or maybe second to last. How do you think women should ask for raises?
How?
How?
They should. I don't know.
If you were a woman and you were asking for a raise, how would you ask? I needed to ask for a raise, so I want tips.
Well, I don't think there's any difference in how you should ask that question, whether regardless of your sex or whatever. So I think you should, if you want a raise, just go in and say, I want a raise.
And then quick one-word answer. Who's the next Zendesk? What's the next big European company to go public?
Oh, I should have thought about that. I don't know.
You don't know? Have they spoken today?
What, sorry? Maybe. There's a lot of great companies here. I love the energy of the startup pit out here. I don't know. I think there's a lot of, compared to
One word.
No, I can't. I don't have it. Sorry.
All right, no problem. Thank you very much for joining us, Mikkel.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.